The peace and quiet of the countryside around the small town of Lexington, Mid Ohio, is about to be shattered by the sound of IndyCar engines screaming around the 2.25-mile, 13-turn racetrack that tests the driver's skills and physical fitness. Alex Zanardi starts today's race as championship leader and the defending champion on this circuit. Can he further extend his 6-point lead over Paul Tracy? The Miller 200 is round 13 of the 1997 PPG Kart Series, and Eurosport is here to bring you all of the action. Hello and welcome from Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw. And as we look out of our commentary position opposite the pit, we can see there's a fair bit of cloud around, but thankfully none of the rain that's been forecast. There's the overhead view of the circuit, and you can see it's a tremendous crowd that's turned out to watch today. It's a brilliant place to watch a race because of the natural terrain with hills and slopes that gives them a great opportunity to see a lot of the track. There is a view of the circuit, and as you can see, we've got a couple of longish straights which open up the opportunities for overtaking. The cars already out on the circuit at the moment on their parade laps before we get this race underway. But let's just remind you what happened in qualifying yesterday, as you may have seen earlier on in the program. Alex Zanardi chased the pole position in yesterday's second qualifying session. Brian Herter was able to sit in the pits and wait for the Italian to improve his time. In the end, Zanardi was not able to challenge Herter's time from the Friday, and Zanardi, who we ride on board with right now, has to line up in second place on the grid. But he won't worry about that too much. He's up front, and in terms of the championship, he's concentrating on further extending his lead. This was the situation after Toronto and before the US 500. Zanardi was some 3 points behind Paul Tracy. But after that race in Michigan, Zanardi leapt to the top of the standings and now has a 6-point advantage over the Canadian. Gilles de Ferran, though, is not far behind in third place, and surely he's also due for a victory, having had a string of consistent podium finishes recently. Well, it really is a tremendous sight. As you can see, the top of the circuit, really hundreds and thousands of people here gathered together expecting a good race. We've seen some good racing already today. We've had some support program action already, and the Barber Dodge race was an absolutely tremendous battle up front, which was won by a young American called Andy Boss, but it really was a great fun, and we're looking forward to more of that sort of action. Let's take a little bit more of a look at the grid itself for the start of this race. Brian Herter then taking pole position. It's his first pole position for a couple of years, and he lives only an hour's drive away from here, so he's got a lot of support. Zanardi alongside him. Second row, Greg Moore and Gilles de Ferran, both feature in the championship and both looking for a victory. Great fifth place for Dario Franchitti, but in a superb effort in qualifying, he's got Maurizio Gugelmin alongside him. Scott Pruitt and Christian Fittipaldi are together on the fourth row of the grid, and Fittipaldi, the faster of the two Swift drivers on this occasion once again. Jimmy Vasser was second here last year. He lines up alongside a twice winner on the Mid-Ohio Sports Car course, Michael Andretti. Raul Boesel and Parker Johnson share the sixth row of the grid. Parker Johnson qualifying a little bit better than sometimes. Mark Blundell still suffering with a very painful back. He trapped a nerve in his back earlier on this weekend. He lines up alongside the Mexican Michel Jourdain. Paul Tracy a long way down alongside twice winner here, Bobby Rahal. And then we've got Andre Ribeiro and the second of the Penske's, Alonso Jr. He's way down on the 9th row. Walter Sullers and PJ Jones join each other on the 10th row of the grid. And then a little further back, it's Adrian Fernandez, who's done not a bad job with the Lola, and funnily enough, he's got the other Lola alongside him of Richie Hearn. Then we've got Patrick Carpentier and Max Papis back at Mid-Ohio, where he made his IndyCar debut last year. Juan Fangio and Charlie Neerberg, who needed a clutch change after the warm-up this morning. In fact, the car is back in the pits as I speak to you right now, and there's more work going on Charlie's car. And at the back of the field, we've got Arndt Meyer and Hiro Matsushita. A look at the track and the race length, 83 laps of this track. Pit window, as you can see, around laps 27 to 30. 2 stops, and they should be reasonably comfortable on fuel. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for them. The cars making their way around, and it looks as though we're going to get ready for the start. Now, listen out on the radio. You may well hear the start. We've got a microphone, actually, with Jim down there on the start gantry, Jeremy. So just watch out for and listen to see if you hear him as they come round. What do you reckon, though, as we're getting this start of the race ready? Are we going to see them make it through that first corner safely?
That's going to be pretty interesting. Alex Zanardi, known as a first lap charger, Brian Herter perhaps known to be a little bit more conservative, but Brian Herter, of course, has in mind that pass at Laguna Seca, the last lap of the last race last season, when Zanardi barged through on the inside of the corkscrew to pull off the victory. See what happens down the first quarter this time.
Good. Let's hear from the starter.
Good. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's get going. Let's get going.
And it's green flag time.
That's a good one.
Brian Herter takes the advantage over Alex Zanardi, right on board with Dario Franchitti starting in 5th place. Coming down to this first sequence of corners, and he's got somebody trying to come around the outside of him, but he manages to slot into position, holds into 5th, right behind Gilles de Ferran, who's behind Greg Moore. Up front, you've got Brian Herter, the race leader, and in 2nd place, Alex Zanardi. Through this sort of helter-skelter sequence, this roller coaster sequence of corners, and Brian Herter has the lead.
Over the crest there in turn 9, and Alex Zanardi not able to challenge Brian Herter at this stage, and there goes Patrick Carpentier off onto the grass there. He's had a horrible weekend. He cannot get to grips with the Alimax Reynard Mercedes on these road courses. It's very strange, Ben, because on the ovals he's magnificent. Last year he was superb just about everywhere, but really struggling this time around.
So the leaders are coming past our commentary position already as you look at some of the battling, and in fact we've got Paul Tracy in the pits. Paul Tracy is into the pit lane now. There are problems already for the man who's 2nd in the championship.
And Michael Andretti also was at the back of the field there, so he's had an off on that first lap as well. He went past in the penultimate position there with only 1 car behind him, and Paul Tracy in the pits. That looks like a long stop as well for Paul Tracy.
Tracy is in trouble, there is no doubt about that. There doesn't seem to be much work going on his car. You're looking at the leader, Brian Herter. We can see Paul Tracy from our commentary position, and it really doesn't look as though much is happening there at all. It looks like a major problem. Meanwhile, Greg Moore is holding off Gilles de Ferran and Dario Franchitti. There is Franchitti in the silver and blue Hogan Racing vehicle that's in 5th position at the moment. Dario put in that dramatic last gasp effort in Friday's qualifying session that had his whole team applauding his efforts. They were astonished at how he managed to find so much time in the closing moments of the session. They said he just found a bit everywhere. Now, this is Michael Andretti. This is what happened to Michael Andretti earlier on the first lap, behind teammate Christian Fittipaldi. Christian and Maurizio, oh, and there was contact there. Michael making contact with, I think, one of the Brahma cars.
One of the Brahma cars, yeah. Michael Andretti drifted wide in that section of the track there, and the Brahma car really left with nowhere to go. Michael Andretti rejoining at the tail end of the field. And that's a horrible start for him. There is Paul Tracy out of the number 3 car, the former championship leader before the US 500 at least, out of this race and not even 2 laps in the books.
It's disaster for Tracy. 6 points was just his disadvantage to Zanardi coming into this race. Now Zanardi 2nd. Let's hear from Paul.
Over in the back, Michael and somebody got together and spun in front of a group. It was myself and I think Pruitt and Parker, and I just got caught up with nowhere to go and ran into the back of Parker when Michael spun in front of everybody and just bent the suspension. We can't fix it.
We talked in the pregame show about this championship situation. This has got to be crushing, I would think.
Well, it really is. I mean, it's you know, when you're stuck back there in 15th, I mean, that's where all the crap really happens, and you know, you can't help it when somebody spins out in front of you and you have nowhere to go.
Thank you. Disappointment indeed for Paul Tracy, and that's a killer blow. And from the terms of the championship, remember, we've only got 4 races after this one. 2 of them are on racetracks. One of them is on a street course. One of them is on an oval. But it doesn't look good for Paul Tracy, and he can see his championship just ebbing away, and particularly with the side of Alex Zanardi up in 2nd. But at the moment, you're riding on board with Scotsman Dario Franchitti, who really needs a points finishing result. That's what he wants so much now. We've seen him running up front so many times this year, and yet he's barely scored any points. He's only got 7 points on the board. He runs 2nd in the Rookie of the Year championship as well to Patrick Carpentier, but he deserves so much more. And at the moment, he's running very well there, chasing Gilles de Ferran, who holds onto 4th.
That crew been busy this morning, of course. An engine change there, a massive failure this morning during the warm-up session, and the Hogan Racing crew done a super job to get everything ship-shape in time for the start of this race. And Dario Franchitti obviously showing no ill effects whatsoever, really running well. There he is down to turn 7 there, and doing a good job early on in the early stages of this motor race.
Dropping downhill, they're coming back uphill slightly through the left-hander, and at the moment it's Herter who leads from Zanardi, Moore, de Ferran, Franchitti and Guterman in 6th position. Let's enjoy the ride a moment. Well, very briefly with Dario Franchitti. You can see there's a bit of a gap back then to Guterman And then Fittipaldi with Scott Pruitt and Jimmy Vasser going pretty well there. Vasser's holding on to 9th position at the moment. And Jimmy was very quick in this morning's warm-up. He was second fastest to Greg Moore in the warm-up this morning, just showing that they've got the Suns a bit better on that car. As we saw last year, he ran very well here, but so far this weekend he's been a bit outpaced by teammate Alex Zanardi.
Yes, he has, but as you say, the Vasser on the tail end of that group, really. First through 8th, 9th positions are fairly close. First three perhaps a little bit ahead of Gilles de Ferran and Branchitti, but then Gugelmin, Fittipaldi, Pruitt and Vasser all really nose to tail there. Farther back down the order, Michael Andretti making a little bit of progress. He was 26th at the end of the first lap. He's now up to 20th, so he's moving up nicely.
Zanardi on board. You ride with Alex Zanardi. You can see how close he's got to the back of Brian Herter's car. And the question that we mentioned in qualifying yesterday, of course, the fact that Brian Herter is using the softer Goodyear tyre that was so good in qualifying, but the question remains, will it be able to last the first stint of the race? And the softer tyre may well go off earlier.
Yeah, he needs to be patient. He knows he needs to be patient. He can't afford to push these tyres too hard, too soon. 1 minute 10.0 last time around, so that's almost 4 seconds away from his qualifying time. But Brian Herter trying to be smooth, trying not to overwork either end of the car in the early stages of this race. Interestingly, of course, it's a little bit cooler than perhaps it was yesterday, so that'll certainly help the tyre situation. And you know, all the other Goodyear runners, except for 3, there's Bobby Rahal, Walter Salas, and the third car is Patrick Carpentier, started on the harder of the 2 Goodyear compounds. Everybody else is on the softer tyre.
So that's an interesting tyre choice. The tactics come into it, but as Jeremy mentioned, it is that bit cooler today. You've got a view just now from Zanardi's onboard camera of the overcast conditions that we've got today. First time we've had this sort of weather. It's been blazing sunshine for the last couple of days here in Lexington, but today it's easier on the drivers as well. Very, very physical racetrack this. They get very little break around the circuit. This is the carousel, as it's known. It's the last section of the track before they come back past the pits, and they're coming up to a very quick left-hander, taking it about 130 miles an hour, which is an important corner. Oh, and Blundell's got a puncture. Mark Blundell. Now, Mark was running down in 13th position. He's got contact to the back. The rear wing's damaged as well. It looks as though he's had an off there. And Mark Blundell running down in 13th position. Not lucky for him by the looks of it. And also, Alonso Jr. has just come into the pits. So there could have been contact between those two. We wait to find out what happened there, but Mark Blundell obviously in big trouble, and for the man who's run so well in the last few races, had a great result of course in Michigan as well last time out, following on from the win in Toronto, but it's not to be here in Mid Ohio, suffering with that painful back after trapping the nerve. He makes his way into the pits as you watch Alonso Jr. coming out of the pit lane now, and Junior continues his run of bad luck, but we wait to see what exactly happened there. Hopefully we'll get a replay of the situation. Let's take a look and see if we can determine what happened. Well, there you see contact was made. It was a bit hard to tell from there exactly what started it.
Yeah, that's going into turn 5 there at the top of the hill, and Unser had been behind Mark Blundell, so I think one has to presume that Alan Jr. was trying to make some kind of a pass there, and obviously it didn't work out too well for either of them. And then I think Adrian Fernandez also involved in that little fracas as well. He has been in the pits and is back out into the race.
So that doesn't affect the leaders, but look at Greg Moore now in 3rd place as we wait to see if Blundell's going to go back out there, putting on a new rear wing by the looks of things, and then deciding whether to continue or not. And Mark discussing with Alan McDonald, no doubt, as to what they should be doing. But just notice how the blue and white car there at the back of that little group, that's Greg Moore, the Canadian, who's had a sequence of non-finishes in recent races, but is still well up in the championship. Took his first win earlier on this year, if you remember, in Milwaukee. He's closed right up to the 2 leaders now. He's running on the Firestone tyre, the same tyre that Alex Zanardi's using, and Zanardi will be all too aware of the fact that Greg Moore is right behind him, and that may be the encouragement that Zanardi needs to start putting Herter under increased pressure and to look for a way past the race leader.
You've already talked about how difficult it is to overtake on this racetrack, though, and Brian Herter knows this place better than anybody. He's raced here in Indy Lights, he's raced here in Barber Dodge, or Barber Saab as it was back then, when he won the championships 5 or 6 years ago, and he's won championships here before. He knows exactly what it takes to get around this racetrack. He knows how fast he can go around here because he won the pole, and he also knows how to protect the line. This corner is important here, turn 1. Protect the line here up into the keyhole, turn 2. He knows he's far enough ahead there that Zanardi's not going to make a jump at him. But coming off this corner here, this is the critical place. There was Herter, very smooth off the exit, a great run off that corner, and he's able to pull out a little bit. Zanardi is not able to get a run at him on the main straightaway. That's the main place to pass down at at the end of that straight.
Well, we've seen Mark Blundell in trouble already, and hopefully we've got Mark down in the pits in a moment to be able to have a word with him.
No luck whatsoever. Did you see any of that coming up from behind in your mirrors?
Well, yeah, unfortunately for us, we had a little bit of a problem under power, and the engine just sort of cut out, or something was making the power get reduced. And it was unfortunate. I think Al just went into the back of us. With, you know, no fault of his. We just broke down under power, under load.
And looking over here on the rear of the car, they quickly just dumped a lot of water. Several buckets came over the wall. Apparently some body work back there around the left rear was very hot, but they've got it under control. Glad you're all right, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. So disappointing news for Mark Blundell. As he said, he had a problem there, and bad luck for Alonso Jr. as well to run into the back of him. That's the way it goes. Look at Zanardi having a little look on the inside now. Herta's a bit slow into the keyhole. This section here, this double right-hander, it's got quite a lot of understeer turning in. You can see the front wheel scrabbling for grip when he turns in there. But what's more important is he can still get the power on coming out, and you can see as they get onto the main straight, where they're getting up to over 185 miles an hour right now, and then onto the brakes again, he's able to just open up enough of an advantage to escape from Zanardi, and so Alex is unable to put a passing maneuver on him. Down the hill once again. This is the real roller coaster section, because they just come down that hill through another right-hander, and now back over this humpback bridge. It's also through a corner as well, which makes life even more difficult. It's blind, and if there's a car off down there, well, they're purely dependent on the marshals to tell them that there's a problem, because they can just see absolutely nothing.
No, there's a whole bunch of blind corners. There's another one there. That's a super corner. You really have to commit to that corner without seeing you cannot see the apex as you turn into that corner. Great corner indeed. It's a wonderful racetrack, this. Onto the front straightaway here. It's only a fairly short straightaway, and then down into turn one, which is very, very fast left-hander. This is where Alex Zanardi is going to try and get a jump out of the corner, but Herta looks pretty good through there. He's turning very, very consistent lap times, right around 1 minute 10.0, but his last 6 laps have all been within a tenth or so. That's good driving from Brian Herta, just fast enough to keep these guys behind him.
10 laps completed, about a third of the way to the first pit stop, and so far Herta's holding off Zanardi very, very effectively. Zanardi just getting a bit of clean air at the end of the straight, not really making a move on Herta though, with Greg Moore in 3rd place. De Ferran is still in 4th place, by the way, and Franchitti in 5th. Dario is just sitting behind Gilles de Ferran in this early stage of the race, not seemingly keen to take any risks. He's just sitting behind the Brazilian. Behind Franchitti, then there's a bit of a gap back to Maurizio Gugelmin. Then it's Christian Fittipaldi. Scott Pruitt is running in 8th position. 9th place is Jimmy Vasser, and in 10th place Raul Boesel. Then Michel Jourdain, still doing a good job there, Jeremy, in 11th.
Yeah, once again going well. I'm very impressed with this young Mexican driver. He's only 20 years old, and you might argue that he's really too inexperienced to be racing in such high-class competition, and certainly his experience prior to coming into the series was minimal. A bit of Formula 2 in Mexico, and that was all he'd really done, but he's really given an extremely good of account himself. I'm impressed.
Zanardi as close as ever, but Herta there just a bit more defensive on the way into the corner. Perfectly fair, and you're right on board with Zanardi. Hear him accelerating up through the gears now. Back onto the outside view from that main straightaway, and Alex Zanardi still closing up to the back of Brian Herta's car, but not able to do anything about it. Moore, for the moment, seems to have just dropped back, but he may be quite content to sit there for a few laps while these two do battle, Herta versus Zanardi. And it's proving to be a tremendous battle already. Zanardi seems to have the edge, but it's trying to find a way past that's proving to be a little bit of a problem. Meanwhile, let me just tell you that Michael Andretti is still running. Remember, we saw him in trouble on the opening lap when he got into a spin. Michael at the moment is running in 15th position, and he's 8 seconds behind the next man on the road, Walter Salles, and we'll try and keep an eye on that and see whether he closes up the gap at all, and see whether Andretti is on one of his famous charges up through the field. Herta completes another lap. That's 12 laps now in the book, and still controls this race with Alex Zanardi in 2nd place, Greg Moore in 3rd, and then a bit of a gap back, another 3 seconds or so to Gilles de Ferran in 4th, Dario Franchitti in 5th, Maurizio Gugelmin in 6th, Christian Fittipaldi 7th, Scott Pruitt in 8th, Jimmy Vasser in 9th, and Raul Boesel in 10th place. They're the top 12 positions, and there you can see Michel Jourdain, Bobby Rahal in the last 2 point scoring places at this early stage of the race. Brian Herta then still maintaining control so far, but it's proving to be a tight battle between him and Alex Zanardi. Remember, Brian Herter running with Ford Cosworth power. Really the front runners of the Ford contingent have been the Brahma team up to now, but Brian Herter is showing that Team Rahal have also got the equipment to do the business.
He's a talent, this young man. He really is. He would be the first to admit that the team has not really made the most of its equipment this year, but he's showing his stuff here this afternoon and that of Team Rahal. But you know, it's fascinating. We've got 3 Reynards here, 1, 2, 3. But here's a little incident going on behind there. There's one of the Toyotas. Oh, that's the incident back from earlier on in the race between Alan Jr. and Mark Blundell. We're back to the front of the field here to go through turn 2 and onto the main straightaway. That's a Ford engine in front, a Honda engine in second, and a Mercedes engine third.
That's great to see, isn't it? The 3 major engine manufacturers up there doing battle. Of course, there is one other engine manufacturer involved in this championship, and that's Toyota, and they're still not quite on the pace of these 3 leading contenders. The top Toyota car at the moment seems to be, who was it? I thought it was PJ Jones.
Yeah, it was PJ Jones. He's actually in 16th place. He's next up behind Michael Andretti.
Although he's just dropped back a couple of places, Jeremy, as he went past that time. For some reason, he seems to have appeared in 18th place now with Max Papis and Juan Fangio right behind him. So we've got 3 of the Toyota powered cars all together there. Toyota's still needing to do a lot of work to catch up to Honda, Mercedes-Benz and Ford, but at least they seem to have got the reliability a little better in recent races.
Yeah, a lot better, isn't it? And Max Papis actually was thrilled with his engine yesterday. He said he felt as if it was the most powerful it had ever been. Unfortunately, he was going too fast too soon in the session, and he came up upon Richie Hearn down in turn 9, and just came up, and there's Juan Fangio as we're talking about the engine reliability, pulled off to the side of the track. But Max Papis came up on Richie Hearn a bit too fast, had to get on the binders, and he locked up the brakes and spun around and into the fence, and that was the end of his qualifying. But in 2 laps, he'd gone a half a second quicker than he'd gone the whole rest of the weekend, so he was pretty pleased. He was certainly looking forward to this afternoon's race.
Yes, I saw Max this morning. He seemed very fired up. Of course, remember this, it sounds like we're going yellow flag by the sound of things, possibly because of that car pulled off. I wonder if they'll need to, though. They may just have a local yellow there. Let's wait and see. Let's hope that they can pull that car off safely without bringing the pace car out. But just going back to Max, it's a year since he started his IndyCar career, because this was the first race he did last year for the Arciero Wells team when he took over the seat that Jeff Krosnoff had, of course, and Jeff Krosnoff tragically killed in Toronto last year. But Max Papis has done a fine job for the team since joining it, and I think he's delighted to be back at a track for the second time, and that's certainly helping him. Look at this, the leaders already coming up to some slower cars to go past, and both getting past Matsushita safely, and Greg Moore also going past safely. So it's not long before they start to catch up to Max Papis' teammate, Hiro Matsushita, who keeps well out of the way.
Yeah, good job by Hiro. They saw the leaders coming up behind him. Turning 1's a pretty tricky corner. There is the safety truck. They're getting Fangio's car out of the way on the main straightaway. You're unlikely to have another accident there, but they want to get that car behind the wall there as quick as they can. There you can see Alex Zanardi closing up under braking, but Brian Herter was able to get a good run off the keyhole corner there, and a good run onto the straightaway. Good straightaway speed from the Ford Cosworth.
It's a shame the camera angle doesn't quite give you the idea down there of just how twisty and up and down it is, that section. We likened it to a Cadwell Park yesterday. For those of you British race fans who have ever been up to the Lincolnshire circuit, you'll know what we're talking about. Perhaps the Nürburgring in Germany is another good example. It really has great elevation change, and those blind brows making it so tricky for a driver who's never been here. Now, most of these drivers have done a fair bit of testing here this year, because it is one of the tracks that they get some testing on. And there, just taking a look at some of the segment times around the circuit, Brian Herter's segment times, the trap speeds, see a top speed of 189 miles per hour. That's on the long back straight, and that's Herter's top speed so far. So just under the 190 mile an hour mark. Good effort that from Herter, and that Ford Cosworth engine's certainly delivering the goods. Alex Zanardi, a bit of a wiggle coming out of the keyhole there. He seemed to gather it together though. And just wonder, he just seemed to lose a length or so on Brian Herter as a result of that, but I don't think it's anything too serious.
Just a little note from farther back down the field. We told you we'd keep an eye on Michael Andretti. That's what we're doing. He's in 15th place still, and he's actually falling back from Gualter Salas. The gap between those two now is almost 12 seconds. So in the last 4 or 5 laps, Michael has lost the best part of a second a lap. So no real progress for the car number 6 of Michael Andretti.
So it doesn't look like we're going to see one of Michael's charges, although remember there could have been some damage done to his car in that incident. We couldn't really tell whether there was any damage done to the suspension, And whatever the reason, Michael is still quite a long way back. Zanardi then running in second position. Won the race here last year, and there's a tradition of double winners here. There is Michael, in fact. That's we right on board with Andretti, as we were telling you then, down in 15th place, but not really able to close up to Gualter Salles, who's ahead of him on the road, the young Brazilian, who's doing his first ever race here on the Mid Ohio sports car course, and yet doing a fine job to stay ahead of Michael at the moment. Let's just ride with him around the lap. Oh well, just as I say it, they cut away from him, unfortunately. It's a shame. It would be nice to get an opportunity to see the track a bit more.
Yeah, let's not. Later on perhaps, but there is Michael through turn 1 there. Car looking fairly stable, and no real signs of any undue wear. You can see a little bit of a dark patch around the centre of that right rear tyre. I don't think that seems to be anything too dramatic at this stage of the game.
Now here we are riding on board with Bobby Rahal, and he's in 12th place at the moment. Right ahead of him is Michel Jourdain Jr., and that's the car that you're watching from this onboard camera. Meanwhile, let me tell you that I can see PJ Jones coming into the pits. This is a bit of an early pit stop for PJ, and I wonder if there's a problem there. We've completed 17 laps now out of the 83 due to be run. 66 laps still to go, and PJ Jones into the pits as the leaders flash past us. Then Gilles de Ferran and Dario Franchitti, just watching them out of our window, but still concentrating here on the onboard camera with Bobby Rahal. There is PJ Jones. He's been into the pits and makes his way back out again. So that was a very short stop for PJ Jones. Oh, that's race leader. He's picked up a puncture. Brian Herter, race leader, is in huge trouble, and Alex Zanardi has taken over this lead of this race on lap number 19. But what has happened to Brian Herter? Disaster for the local man, and the fans who are crowding the side of the track cannot believe it. Their man has gone out of the lead of the race.
Yeah, what a tragedy for Brian Herter. He was doing such a good job there. He seemed to be trying to take care of the car as best he could. And here he is coming up towards the keyhole here. He's, there it is, bang. Oh, Jay, the thing just blew apart.
Well, that's unusual, isn't it? Don't forget he's running the softer tyre, but Goodyear will not be happy to see that at all. Of course, that's a disaster for them, having their car running up front. And there was no indication of that. Of course, they wouldn't have run the tyre if they'd had any clue that that was going to happen to them. Alex Zanardi, let's see, did he have to do a masterly avoidance job? Well, not really. He wasn't that close, thankfully. It's just as well that he wasn't tucked under Brian Herter's rear wing. He could easily have been right there, and that could have been big trouble for the Italian. But Zanardi able to just go through on the inside. Brian did a great job of keeping out wide, keeping out of the way of Zanardi and more. But Brian can't believe it, can he? Look at that. He was driving a superb race up front, just controlling the pace, making sure that Zanardi had no chance to go through. And the Shell crew down in the pits there, they can't believe it either. Huge disappointment for Brian Herter, but it does raise the question, if that softer Goodyear tyre can do that, are we going to see the other Goodyear runners in trouble as well? Remember, Gilles de Ferran is the next of the Goodyear runners to be running well. He's now moved up to 3rd position, and Dario Franchitti is 4th, and we've got the news that the yellow flags come out. The pits will be opened up. We could see some people taking the opportunity to come into the pits fairly soon. It's a little bit early to start making pit stops, but we probably will see some of the teams taking this chance. I can see Team Rahal getting a set of tyres ready for Bobby, and indeed Alex Zanardi, race leader, comes into the pits now. So we're seeing the first round of pit stops under the yellow flag, and Zanardi has to go right down to the far end of the pits before he comes in to his pit, and just crossing the line. Some of the cars.
Yeah, Mauricio Gugelmin did not make a pit stop, and he was the only one so far not to come into the pits. Everybody else on pit lane for regular service.
Great stop, 9.6 seconds, a very rapid stop indeed. Look at that, almost collecting the Brahma guys as they made their pit stop. But the Zanardi comes out safely, and there is Brian Herter walking back into the pits. Crushing disappointment once again. And oh, and look at de Ferran. De Ferran's had a problem coming out of the pit lane. Maybe he's made contact with somebody. It's a very narrow pit exit. You can see there yourself how it narrows down on the exit because of the bridge on the exit of the pit lane. And de Ferran has had some disaster. And don't forget, he was running in 3rd position, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's astonishing. His pit, I'm pretty sure is up. Yeah, it's up that end of the pit. I think he's got 3 from the end there. You can see the blue Walker pit there. And I don't know that he just lost it coming out of the pits or what happened there. Well, yeah, hopefully we'll have a replay for you in a moment. But at least he's got the engine still running. And, oh, no, he hasn't.
No, I don't think he has. He's still asking for a push from the CART officials, and they're trying to get him out of the way from pure safety's sake. They don't want him stuck there on the exit of the pits. It's a narrow enough place as it is. He's being pulled back to the Walker Racing pit, I think, by the looks of things. And of course, his crew aren't really allowed to do much until he gets a bit closer in. Then they're allowed to take over, and then they'll try and fire that engine back up again. But what disaster it is for Gilles de Ferran, who was running so competitively and now has seen really all chances of getting onto the podium come to a complete end. He gets the engine fired up, hopefully, and rejoins the race, but it's a disaster for de Ferran. Brian Herder's car is being craned away after the disappointment of blowing that left rear tyre that has caused this yellow flag that we're under at the moment. The pace car still out there leading the field around, and we've seen everybody come into the pits bar one, and that is the man who's now leading, Maurizio Gugelmin, driving for Pac West. We've already seen his teammate Marc Blundell out of the race, unfortunately, but Maurizio has decided to stay out there. And interesting tactics there, Jeremy, with everybody else deciding to come in and refuel.
Yeah, it's 20 laps in the books. That's a little bit early for their pit window. Everybody else is really going to struggle to get to the end of this 70 or 83 lap race with just one more pit stop. The Pac West team knows it's got to make 2 pit stops at some stage or another. They're hoping that by saving a pit stop, if everybody else has to stop one more time, there's Brian Herder being greeted by the fans. He's got a great attitude, this young man, he really has. And he's bitterly disappointed. He knows he had a fantastic opportunity to win this race, but taken away from him, absolutely no fault of his own.
Well, such a disappointment, as you say, for Brian Herter, and particularly on local territory, if you like. There is his team leader, Bobby Rahal, and of course the team not that far away. They're based actually just down the road, really, down in near Columbus, Ohio, and Team Rahal, which really has just begun again to pick itself up. They did this last year as well. They had a good finish to last season, and now they seem to be doing similar again. And of course, there was a change of engine over the winter. They switched to the Ford Cosworth unit, and it seems now again to be coming together for them.
It really does. I mean, it's funny, they've changed equipment every single year since Bobby Rahal took over this team in '92. They've changed either the chassis or the engine every single year. So, you know, it makes it awfully tough to start off the season with a brand new technical package, which they have to learn all the different characteristics. But the pace car is in now. We're about to go green. Maurizio Gugelmin at the head of the field.
So Maurizio Gugelmin now, he was running pretty competitively before this yellow flag period. He's not come into the pits, but he's got the man who was leading just before when Brian Herter went out, Alex Zanardi in second position. And then we've got one of the lapped cars, then Greg Moore in third. So Zanardi's got a bit of respite from the attentions of the Canadian in the blue and white players car. But remember, what it's meant is that Dario Franchitti has now closed up to the back of Greg Moore, thanks to that pace car period, and Dario's got Christian Fittipaldi right behind him. So we really have got quite an interesting tussle now with several different cars. There's Dario Franchitti in the Hogan car, looking to make a move on Greg Moore, coming down the inside. Oh, it doesn't quite come off. Greg Moore is a hard man to pass, and he would have braked as late as anybody on the outside there as they come past the assembled crowd on the top of the hill there, and Dario Franchitti has to slot in behind Greg Moore once again.
Yeah, but a good, just making his presence felt there. Greg Moore certainly knows that the young Scotsman is behind him, and he wants past if he certainly can. But this stage of proceedings, still early stages, and there is Bobby Rahal, who is running now in 7th position, car number 7. And there, a view of the car, a couple ahead of him is Christian Fittipaldi. But at the end of this first lap under green, Maurizio Gugelmin a good lead over Alex Zanardi.
Gugelmin maintaining that pace at the moment then, and what the question is, of course, how far can he go with this fuel that he's got? He hasn't come into the pits. That's the view back from Dario Franchitti. He's got an onboard camera facing backwards today, and you're looking therefore at Christian Fittipaldi in the position behind in the Swift chassis. And remember, Christian running top Swift at the moment with Michael Andretti still a long way down. He's in 12th place now. He made up a little bit of ground on the last round of pit stops, but Michael's still down in 12th, and we switch from one onboard to another, and now we're back with Alex Zanardi, who, if anything's, dropping back a little bit from Gugelmin. But remember, Gugelmin's got a very low load of fuel on that car at the moment, whereas Alex Zanardi has virtually a full tank.
Yes, plus he wants to make sure he doesn't push his tyres too hard. Even for the Firestone runners, tyre wear is a problem on this Mid Ohio sports car course. It's a fairly abrasive racetrack, but the critical thing is that we have concrete on all the apexes of the corners, asphalt on the rest of it. So the transition from the asphalt to the concrete is what really causes the problems. And Zanardi would be careful not to push those tyres too soon.
The white car there is the car of PJ Jones, which has been lapped by the leader, but still it's staying ahead of Greg Moore and Dario Franchitti at the moment. And of course, PJ Jones will want to try and stay near the front because he may get a chance to get back on the lead lap. But on the other hand, he won't try and block Greg Moore. Indeed, Moore slips down the inside, as you can see from on board Dario Franchitti. And Franchitti will now hopefully get an opportunity to accelerate out of the keyhole, build up the speed here, pick up the slipstream, get down the inside, go through the kink here, building up to around about 190 miles an hour, and he slips past very easily indeed. And Franchitti can continue his battle with Greg Moore. The next one to get past PJ is this man, Christian Fittipaldi. And Fittipaldi, the Brazilian, doing a fine job with the Swift. Let's just take a look at the fuel window. There you can see that Guterman really doesn't have many more laps out there before he has to come in to make his stop.
Yeah, another 5 or 6 laps probably we'll see him in the pit lane, so he will drop certainly well towards the back of this pack, but he's hoping that everybody else is going to have to make 2 more pit stops after that, and once all that cycling is completed, he'll be out in front of this race. That's the strategy, that's what he's hoping. We'll see what happens.
Now, Brian Herter was the early race leader. We've got him in the pits. Let's hear from him.
Long walk and such disappointment. Did you have any indication that tire wear was going to lead to what happened there with that virtual explosion of the tire?
No, not at all. And to be fair, I'm not really sure it was a tire wear related problem. It could have been a puncture or something like that. You know, there's a lot of focus on the tire wear going into the race, and I have to say that my Goodyear tires were holding up really well for me. I mean, much better than expected even, and this is just an unfortunate thing. I think we probably got a puncture or something. There's nothing you can do about it.
How big a gamble did you think you were taking by sticking with that when the boss man and your teammate was staying on the tire?
Well, like I said, I didn't think it was that big a gamble, and without seeing the data, I don't know exactly what happened, but obviously
big disappointment. We've got a little audio problem down here. Thank you, Brian.
Well, while that interview is going on, you're watching a good match for 6th place as well, with Scott Pruitt holding on to the 6th place in the moment in the yellow and orange car. But Bobby Rahal, that we were talking about earlier, they made up some ground on that round of pit stops, and Bobby has moved up from 12th place to 7th position, as you can see. Started in 16th place as well, so Bobby gradually making progress, and he is running on the harder Goodyear tyre, which seems to be working quite well. Now, of course, whether he's still running on that tyre or whether he's switched to the softer tyre, we can't tell from up here. They are allowed to switch during the course of the race, and it's possible that Bobby would have put the slightly softer Goodyear tyre on in that first pit stop.
I think they were planning to go the distance on what they had, to be perfectly honest, Ben. I think they know that tyre wear is a problem for everybody. I'm not saying it's going to cause catastrophic failures like that happened to Brian Herter. As he said, he probably just picked up a puncture, and that's what caused the tyre to come apart. But certainly, I think Bobby Rahal will be. He's pretty happy with the way that car is running. It's early days. He knows he has great support here. He loves this racetrack. He'll be fine at this stage in the game. You can see the car. You can see it just pushing through that corner on that concrete surface.
Over the rise there, you get a bit of wheel spin. You could just hear it on the onboard microphone. And Rahal continues his chase of Pruitt. You saw Adrian Fernandez in the pits a moment ago, and Adrian looking to be in a little bit of trouble in the Lola, running quite a long way down the order at the moment. Let me just, you can see the order in your top left-hand corner of your screen, but I'll just run through it quickly, keep you up to date with the gaps, because Guterman has a 3.5-second lead now over Alex Zanardi. But remember, Guterman's getting closer and closer to having to make his first pit stop. Greg Moore is in 3rd place, and he's some 3 seconds behind Zanardi. Then it's Dario Franchitti 4th, Fittipaldi in 5th, and then this battle we're looking at the moment for 6th between Scott Pruitt in the yellow and orange and Bobby Rahal in the Miller Lite car. Raul Boesel is not far behind them in 8th position, and then in 9th is Michel Jourdain Jr., 10th Andre Ribeiro, 11th is Gualter Sales, and just into the points Michael Andretti in 12th. Alonso Jr. still running in spite of that incident earlier on when he ran into the back of Mark Blundell, who was suffering with engine problems. Alonso Jr. is running 13th, Parker Johnson's 14th, then Richie Hearn 15th, Carpentier 16th. Gilles de Ferran is still out there after that problem he had coming out of the pits. He's still there in 17th. Jimmy Vasser had a big problem. They couldn't get the tyre changed, and there is Jimmy in 18th position, right behind de Ferran. But as I speak, race leader is into the pits. Maurizio Guterman has got to his pit window. He's got to come in and make his first pit stop. Now, as Jeremy said, this will drop him right down to the back of the queue, but it could be good news for him even so, because the other teams are likely to have to make 2 more stops, whereas Maurizio should be able to get away with just 1 more. He's a little bit slow away, but he gets away eventually, and Maurizio Gugelmin makes it back out of the pits. And we are going to have to watch his progress throughout the rest of this afternoon, especially when everybody else makes their next stops. So, Gugelmin at the back, Zanardi takes over the lead, Moore is second, and that means that Dario Franchitti is now in third. Back at Mid Ohio, Alex Zanardi leads after 32 laps and 51 laps still to go. Greg Moore in second, Dario Franchitti is third. Let's just hear from Goodyear to find out what's been happening from the tyre situation.
Then we saw the delamination on that rear that put him out of the race. Have you been able to learn anything, or can you tell us anything about what may have happened?
We're looking at the rear right now. We assume it was some type of puncture. We haven't seen any kind of problems with any of the rears, throughout the weekend, so we assume it's probably some type of debris, but as soon as we get the tire back, we'll have a chance to take a closer look at it and determine exactly what happened. But at this point in time, we assume it was some type of puncture.
Any problems in delamination of tires for your company and your drivers this weekend?
We're seeing a little bit of tearing on the front tires, which we're noticing during a normal pit stop. Doesn't appear that it's affected their normal routine as far as when they would have normally stopped. So we're monitoring that very closely, obviously, during the race. And a lot of the teams are going to the primary tire, which is a more consistent tire. A lot of the ones that opted for the optional tire strictly for qualifying. So that's where we're at right now.
Thank you, Steve. Jack?
Well, Gary, the litany of frustration for Adrian Fernandez continues here in Mid Ohio. What put you out?
Well, at the beginning I have a black flag. I passed PJ on the start. It's I didn't really calculate exactly the timing of the line. And then we were running okay. We had the black flag, but we were making position. Then we have a few problems in our pit stop. And then at the end was a misfire that we couldn't find out at the end, and that was what put us out.
Adrian, this has been a season that I'm sure you and Tasman would love to forget. Nothing seems to go right for you this year.
Yeah, it's nobody has gave up. Everybody's doing their best effort, and we're trying to be as calm, as patient as we can. But it hasn't been easy. We've been trying to work with a lot of people, and they're doing the best effort. But it's not our year, so we just have to try to keep going and keep charging, and we'll see next year.
Thank you, Adrian.
So Adrian Fernandez out of the race, and very disappointing for him, of course.
Yeah, Lola Cars again working hard here, speaking to the chief aerodynamicist there, Chris Saunders, this morning, and he was saying they have a new under tray here for the car, and speaking to both Richie Hearn and Adrian Fernandez, it certainly helped the drivability of that car, but still the speed is not yet there for the Lola.
Riding on board with Jimmy Vasser, and we've been watching quite an interesting fight back up the field from both Gilles de Ferran and Jimmy Vasser over the last few laps. Jimmy's right behind Gilles. In fact, they've got Alonso Jr. just ahead of them. Gilles de Ferran dropped down to 20th at one point, but he's now got himself up into 13th position. So that's a good effort, and Jimmy Vasser has basically been picking them off right behind, hasn't he?
Absolutely. They were indeed 20th and 21st after that caution, after their problems in the pits, and they're now up to 13th and 14th. And next in their sights is that fun little battle there between the two second-generation drivers, Michael Andretti and Alonso Jr. And in fact, they're right up with those two right now as they flash past us here to complete lap 35. So that's going to be interesting in the next couple of laps.
Just looking at Fernandez's teammate briefly, there goes Alonso Jr. now, there he is, and there is Gilles de Ferran, as we were saying, fighting his way back up after that disastrous pit stop when he ended up half spun at the end of the pit lane. And there's a wonderful view. We've got an onboard camera right on the front wing of de Ferran's car, and if you want to see the ups and downs of this track, then this is a camera that gives us a chance. Coming down to the first of the ups and downs, and he's having a little look down the inside of Alonso Jr., but doesn't quite make it. They climb uphill here, round the left-hander, drop steeply downhill once again, then a tight right-hander at the bottom of the hill. It's tighter than it looks on camera there. Then they climb back uphill under the bridge, over the brow, drop downhill, try and pick the line here, get it on the brakes, and then up over the hill once again as they build up speed out of turn 9. Tremendous sequence, and the drivers are working really hard through that section. Very physical indeed. Now coming up towards the final corner on the circuit, the carousel as it's called. Not as banked as the famous carousel on the old Nürburgring circuit in Germany, but it is a very tight corner, and then they drop down out of it and across start-finish line once again. still De Ferran looking for a way past the Penske.
Yeah, and interestingly, over the last couple of laps, really only, Michael Andretti has pulled away a little bit from Alonso Jr., so I'll begin to struggle with that Penske as he turns into the keyhole there with Gilles De Ferran right behind him trying to get a run off the corner. Lillard comes off there pretty well, and right behind those two is Jimmy Vasser, the defending PPG Cup champion.
Yeah, but remember, it's still Jimmy Vasser's teammate that's leading this race. It's Alex Zanardi up front. He has a 3.6 second advantage. Now then, on board with Gilles, climbing up this little hill. Hundreds of people up on the outside there. Great place to watch. And then downhill again. Now get ready for the humpback bridge bit, if you like, and listen to the wheel spin. There, you could just hear it, little jump in revs as he goes over the humpback bridge, and the rear wheel's actually spinning, and then accelerating up this curving back straight through the quick left-hander once again. Difficult to overtake. Little puff of smoke there. Oh, and De Ferran, maybe it was from Unser's car, the puff of smoke. Unser suddenly in trouble, and he makes his way back towards pit lane. A sudden failure from the back of the Penske. There is fluid from the back of the car. And suddenly, the end of Alonso Jr.'s race. And De Ferran, well, I'm sure he's delighted because it's given him the chance to go through. And Jimmy Vasser, they both move up to 12th and 13th places. It looks as though it's the end of the day for Penske. And Jeremy, that 100th win is proving to be extremely elusive, isn't it?
Oh, isn't it just? I mean, 3 in a row for Paul Tracy in the month of May, and absolutely next to nothing since then. And heartbreak once again for Alonso Jr., just nothing going right for him there.
So let's take a look at the replay. There was a puff of smoke up here through this left-hander. Let's just see there. Yes, there it was, the steam coming out of the back of the car, and well, that was the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, as he gets on the power, just absolutely blows some kind of failure there inside the engine, you have to say, and Alonso Jr. just able to coast around the carousel into pit lane, end of his day.
So a rare Mercedes-Benz failure. We've seen a couple today with Dario's problem in the warm-up this morning, and now Alonso Jr. looked like engine failure. Of course, it may prove to be something like a water pipe that had come off or something similar to that, but Alonso Jr. explaining the problems that he was having out there to the team. But whatever it is, Penske can pack up and go home early today. Paul Tracy out of the race very early on as a result of the spin in the pack that Michael Andretti was involved in. And so Tracy not scoring, and now Alonso Jr. not scoring either. That means that Alex Zanardi is delighted to be up front, and a possible 20 points for Alex Zanardi. But apparently we're just getting reports that he's reporting concern with the team about fuel consumption. And remember, they all did come in fairly early, and it does mean that we're likely to see two further pit stops from these guys.
Yeah, interestingly, after Mauricio Gugelmin came into the pits, the race leader, Alex Zanardi, was lapping around about 1 minute 8, high 8s, 1 minute 8.8, 8.9 thereabouts. He's cut that pace a little bit. He's now running low 9, so he's cut the pace by at least 4 or 5 tenths a lap. He's still pretty consistent there, and the gap from him to Greg Moore, who I'm sure is in a similar predicament, is now about 4 seconds. Dario Franchitti, meanwhile, has fallen back somewhat, 11 seconds behind in 3rd position.
Yes, we just saw Franchitti, then Fittipaldi, then the battle here between Pruitt and Rahal. It's the battle for 5th place now, and it's been very closely contested for a number of laps, but still Bobby's struggling to get past. Both using the same engine, the Ford Cosworth power unit powering these two cars. And it was interesting, I was looking at a press release. Oh, look at this going down the inside. Yes, Bobby this time, I think he's made it. He's made the move. Now he just has to squeeze Pruitt out, and he does it. And the crowd up on the top of the hill will love that bit. Bobby Rahal squeezes past into 5th place.
Great stuff by Bobby Rahal. Fine effort there to get past the car of Scott Pruitt. And a couple of years ago there, you might remember, Bobby Rahal had a little incident with Jacques Villeneuve, and Bobby was on the outside line in that corner, and he was the one who ended up in the fence, so right tight up against the barrier, hard against the barrier I should say. He wasn't very happy with Mr. Villeneuve on that occasion.
Now we've got Alonso Jr. down in the pits. We've seen him go out of this race, and another disappointing day, and hopefully we should have an interview with him now.
Other cars go by. Al, have you ever had to work harder to gain positions? You got yourself up to the top 12 after a variety of problems, ultimately the engine.
Yeah, we think what happened was when I got up on Blundell there, you know, climbing up on top and coming down, we damaged one of the side pods. We really feel that put a hole in the radiator right then, and all my water went away.
Blundell apparently had motor problems and lost power. There just wasn't room for you to do anything to take evasive action?
Yeah, no, I mean, I tried. You know, he quit running right as he crested over the hill, and I was trying to get underneath him, and I ended up climbing his left rear. You know, I almost made it because I didn't get my front wing at all, but, you know, there's about that much room between the tire being wider than the front wing. And I just climbed up on top of him, and, you know, I was very lucky to come out of it the way I did. And
tell me about the tire wear. And everybody trying to conserve tires, you were on the option for Goodyear. What kind of wear were you getting?
I was getting pretty good wear, actually. You know, we didn't, the tires were not going off near as bad as we thought they were going to, you know, but, you know, the marble car was running real good, and we lost the water. Thank you.
So, indeed, it wasn't an engine failure. It was the water problem created by that incident with Mark Blundell, and Al Unser Jr. explaining that, but again, the disappointment for him to be out of the race. Meanwhile, these two are still battling hard. Gilles de Ferran in 12th place and Jimmy Vasser in 13th. The next man on their list is Michael Andretti. He won't prove an easy man to pass, but they are gradually closing up to Michael. I think the gap is closing each lap, and last time around it was just about a second. So these two still going well. De Ferran on the Goodyear tyres, Vasser on the Firestone, seem to be pretty even. The top three still Zanardi, Moore and Franchitti. Welcome back to the PPG Kart Series here on Eurosport. Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw. You're riding with Gilles de Ferran at the moment, still continuing his charge, but hasn't closed much further up to Michael Andretti. But what we have seen is a retirement. Christian Fittipaldi has gone out of the race, and there you see the onboard camera on Christian's car as they manage to crane it out of the way. No need for a full course caution on that one, but a disappointment, of course, for the Brazilian, who was running in 4th position at the time, next up behind Dario Franchitti. And in fact, Christian also managing to find a lift to get back to the pit, so that's handy, isn't it? Still limping somewhat on that leg that's still repairing after suffering the breakage in Surfers Paradise earlier this year. But disappointment because Christian's not going to finish this one. You're with the race leader now, Alex Zanardi, and he has a 3.8 second lead last time round over the Canadian Greg Moore, and Dario Franchitti still running in 3rd. Dario's dropped back a bit. He's about 11 seconds behind Greg Moore. But Jeremy, you've got a bit of a theory on that.
Well, yeah, I think he's certainly on fuel conserve mode, is Dario Franchitti. I think the other two are as well, but we'll see who is able to judge the pace the best. We don't yet know whether they're going to be able to make it on one more pit stop. I know these guys, I'm sure they're hoping and praying for a couple of yellows. That'll help them out a lot. A couple of full course cautions would be an enormous break for them. But if it goes green the rest of the way, there's going to be some serious short shifting here, and doing everything they can to conserve every drop of methanol.
And of course, somebody else may well decide not to do that and just go flat out and be prepared to do another one. Now then, look at this. Who's watching at home? His mum, his sister, his brother, grandmothers, friends and relatives. And they're watching with us, hopefully, on Eurosport. Hello, and I hope you're enjoying Dario's drive at the moment. We certainly are. In 3rd place at the moment. Dario needs the points, and we'd love to see him score some points here at Mid Ohio today. And let's just hope it all holds together. He's suffered a lot of bad luck this year. They've had problems in the pits on a number of occasions this season that have dropped him down the order. Remember, he did a great job at the Gateway track where he was leading in the closing stages. They had a gearbox problem there. In Detroit, he was leading, and they had a problem with the refueling rig, which dropped him right down the order as well. So he has had his share of bad luck this year. Dario Franchitti at the moment doing a fantastic job, holding on to 3rd place and running very, very consistently indeed. Watching him through turn 1 there and out towards the keyhole. And I know a number of people watching back in the UK, not just Dario's family. I know, for example, a bunch of you watching in the Reynard factory. I hope you're all enjoying the show here this evening. And for those of you in the Reynard factory, I'm sure you're pretty happy with the way things are going at the moment.
Yeah, and you'll probably want to know too that David Donahue scored a super double victory yesterday in the Reynard-built Dodge Stratus of the Pac West Racing Group team. So a good effort by David Donahue to cement his lead in the championship. Also Reynard, interested the Reynard folks, of course, is a brand new Barber Dodge car, which was debuted this weekend here and shown off to the press for the first time and prospective drivers. I'll tell you what, that created a real stir. It's a beautiful race car. and for the Barber Dodge series, that's going to be a tremendous boon over these next few years.
There's a Reynard. It's the car being driven by Michel Jourdain Jr. And Jeremy, he's doing a really great job today, isn't he? He's running in 7th position. Not a familiar name, of course, to most of our viewers, because Michel's into his first full season of the PPG CART series. He's come from nowhere a little bit, but he's doing a great job. He's also right behind the German driver, Arndt Meyer, in the black and yellow car. But Michel Jourdain's got to watch out a little bit because he's got Andre Ribeiro behind him.
Yeah, Arndt Meyer's actually just come out of the pits. He's just made his second pit stop, and he'll need to get out of the way of this group of much faster cars behind him. Actually, Meyer was doing a pretty good job. He was having a good little dice with Carpentier and Max Papis before he came into that pit stop. But he certainly allowed this group to close up on Michel Jourdain Jr. So quite a battle. There goes Jourdain down the inside there. Ribeiro next to it, then Salos, Andretti, Gilles de Ferran and Jimmy Vasser all nose to tail. Great stuff.
Yeah, it's making for exciting racing, isn't it? On board with Michael once again, but he's got to watch out for Gilles de Ferran. Now watch out, Ribeiro going past Meyer, but Guelta Sales trying to make it 3 abreast down there. Doesn't quite happen. And now you ride with Gilles de Ferran. You've got the Texaco car of Andretti right ahead of you. Oh, and now look at this, Jimmy Vasser. Jimmy Vasser's driven right round the outside of Gilles de Ferran. Fantastic. On board with Gilles de Ferran, and what a view of the back of the Ganassi car of Jimmy Vasser. And talk about opportunistic piece of overtaking. Jimmy Vasser saw them all slowing each other down, just went right round the outside. Meanwhile, Dario Franchitti. Franchitti's just come into the pit lane on lap number 48. Well, it's about time for these guys to start making their second pit stops, and Dario Franchitti is into the pits to make the second of his scheduled stops now. Let's hope there are no problems. They've had their troubles in the past in the pits, but Dario gets it away. No stalling of engines. He's a clean getaway out of the pit lane. Keeps it on the 60-mile-an-hour rev limiter till he gets to the blend line, and now he can join at full pace. Back onto the circuit. A clean stop for Franchitti, and we wait to see the rest of the front runners start to make their pit stops now.
Any time now, so 48 laps in the books there. It means he's got to go, 35 laps on his next tank full of fuel. He came in last on lap 20, so he's only done 28 laps on this tank full of fuel. No question, I think he's going to have to stop again unless there's a significant full course caution. And here's Jimmy Vasser trying to get way past Michael Andretti there. Great little battle that now for 9th position. And Jimmy Vasser, he's a deserving PPG Cup champion. He's had some real bad luck this year. He's had some very good runs, and just niggly little things seem to have stopped him from getting onto the top step of the podium. But he's ready to get another win under his belt.
Into the pits comes Scott Pruitt. He was running in 5th position, and we're beginning to see a few more now. Michel Jourdain also making his way into the pit lane as you continue to ride with Michael Andretti. Now he's getting the signal. Did you hear that? That was on the radio. It said, Michael, pit this lap, and that means he'll be coming round next time. So a lot of pit activity going on. Good stop from the Brahma Sports team, with Scott Pruitt getting out cleanly as well, and Michael Andretti just continuing his way round. But remember, he'll be coming in at the end of this one.
There goes Jimmy Vasser there, getting well sideways, coming on the acceleration out of the keyhole turn as we're on board. This is a great shot, isn't it, from Gilles de Ferran's car. And there is Jimmy Vasser going down the inside of Arndt Meyer, down the end of the straightaway there. He gets through cleanly. Oh dear, Arndt Meyer doesn't exactly let him go, does he?
No, that's right. Gilles de Ferran now trying to go around the outside. Careful to put his car where Meyer can really see it. And yeah, that's good stuff. Both of them doing well. De Ferran getting through cleanly and safely. Meanwhile, Patrick Carpentier is the next man that we can see coming into the pits, right opposite our commentary box window here. There is the race leader, though. And are we going to see Alex Zanardi coming into the pits on this lap? We wait to see. He's got himself a 5-second advantage now over Greg Moore. There is Carpentier in the pit lane. And Zanardi's completed another lap, so he's managing to do quite a few laps here on this tank full. And Zanardi continues. Michael Andretti is into the pits, as we expected. He comes in, and the Newman Haas crew have gone to work. Meanwhile, let's just see Zanardi coming around the latter third of the lap here now. I wonder if he's going to decide to come in. A couple of corners, and you'll see on the next corner, the carousel, when we go off him, as Michael Andretti just manages to get past Richie Hearn as he comes out of the pit lane. Andre Ribeiro also pulling out at the same time, and Alex Zanardi is in. So Zanardi does decide to come in on lap number 51. Greg Moore also in from 2nd place. Now then, Jeremy, what we've got to do is keep an eye on where Dario Franchitti is as they all come out again. So we can see the carousel here, and we can see them come out of the final corner, and we'll see whether Zanardi is able to get out ahead. He should be able to get a huge lead over Dario Franchitti and a reasonably comfortable lead over Greg Moore. There goes Zanardi. Doesn't look as though there's too many problems for him. Greg Moore still being fueled. Remember, he came in 5 seconds afterwards. 17.9 second stop for Greg Moore, and he gets it out once again, and it looks as though those two should come out fairly well ahead of Dario Franchitti. Meanwhile, we're seeing a few more make their pit stops, but Bobby Rahal has not yet come into the pits, so he now has taken over the lead of the race, and you saw Zanardi come out pretty much with Rahal there. So Bobby now leads this race. It's the second time a Team Rahal car has led this afternoon. It was Brian Herter in the early stages until he suffered the puncture that saw the tyre destroy itself in dramatic fashion. But now team boss Bobby is leading the race, but he's got to make a number 2 stop very soon. Meanwhile, Maurizio Gugelmin, who of course is out of sequence with everybody else, he's running in 9th place at the moment.
Yeah, all sorts of shuffling going on now. He'll move up significantly in the next few laps. All these other guys coming to pits. He'll be up into 5th or 6th place, I would say, at least. I think Michel Jourdain Jr., incidentally, must have had a very slow pit stop. He's dropped a long way behind Michael Andretti, who has also got ahead of Andre Ribeiro. So all sorts of shuffling going on.
Bobby Rahal into the pits this time. So Zanardi takes over the lead once again, and he crosses the line. Let's see what the gap between himself and Moore is. There is Bobby into the pits, and the fuel goes aboard, that methanol fuel that these cars use at the rate of less than 2 miles. Oh no, he stalled it. Bobby, what's going on? The experienced man, maybe he's got a clutch problem. Bobby Rahal stalls the engine. They get him going, and that's lost him a couple of vital seconds as across the line come the others. Now then, let's get a bit of a catch-up on the situation. Zanardi has an 11-second lead over Greg Moore. Dario Franchitti is a further 11 seconds behind in 3rd position. The top 3 remain unchanged after the stops. Bobby Rahal having made his stop, well, that'll drop him down a bit. We'll have to see next time round whether he's managed to hold on to 4th position. Don't think so. Maurizio Gugelmin has moved up as a result of all this. And remember, he's got another stop to make, but the others are going to be tight on fuel, and Maurizio will be able to run flat out once he's made his other stop. Presumably, he's going to have be able to run flat out in the latter part of the race, so it's going to make life very, very interesting indeed to see whether he can do anything. You're on board with Dario Franchitti at the moment, and Franchitti's up behind Hiro Matsushita, wanting to get past the Japanese driver, and suitably enough, Dario moves out of the way, but I don't know whether he moved out of the way. I think that was a thank you, in fact, from Dario, just a little thank you wave from Franchitti, but he's got Maurizio Gugelmin right behind him, and this is the battle for 3rd place. So, Gugelmin running very well now. 4th place for him, 5th place for Scott Pruitt, who's a few seconds behind these two. You just saw him in the background there. Interesting situation this is now, with Gugelmin, who will have to make another stop, there's no doubt about that. But what Gugelmin needs to do is to push as hard as possible in this point of the race, get as past as many cars as he can, and Dario, well, he's got to be sensible here. It may not be worth risking everything to hold Gugelmin off, because Gugelmin will have to come into the pits again. Let's watch this battle. Franchitti holds the middle line. Gugelmin's going for the inside, but he's not quite there, and Dario's able to turn in safely as they go up through the roller coaster section again.
Yeah, good effort there. Nice putting his nose down the inside just so Dario can see it, and Franchitti able to hold his position there, and really doing a beautiful job this afternoon. 3rd place for Hogan Racing. He needs the points. That's the utmost thing in his mind going into this race. Points, points, points. The Rookie of the Year title chase is really between him and Patrick Caponche. They've been the 2 quick guys all year long, but Caponche is no threat whatsoever on these road and street courses. He's brilliant on the ovals, but on these tracks he's absolutely nowhere. He's back in 18th place right now, and Dario Franchitti, he's been very, very quick just about everywhere he's been, but he hasn't been able to get to the checkered flag.
That's right. Remember, we've only got one more oval to go. That's the Super Speedway at Fontana to finish the season. So that stacks in Franchitti's favour, but he does need to get the points, as we said. So Gugelmin continues to chase him in 4th place. Pruitt in 5th. Rahal, after his stop, has now come out behind Pruitt. So that problem that he had getting out of the pits has effectively thrown away all that hard work he did in getting past Pruitt. Meanwhile, Gugelmin's down the inside. Dario was fairly brave there in deciding that he was going to take the corner come what may, and holds on to 3rd place at the moment. Maurizio is going to have to do something fairly committed, I think, to get past the Scot, who is very intent on keeping his 3rd position at the moment.
Yeah, and all the time. Dario Franchitti certainly is losing ground to the two leaders. Alex Zanardi running quickly again, already down into the 9s, 1 minute 9.8 last time around, the last 2 laps around in actual fact. And Greg Moore around about 10 seconds behind him, and the gap back to third place, another 14 seconds. So Franchitti might not be quite as fast as Mauricio Gugelmin, but Gugelmin's certainly having a hard time trying to find a way past him. And there is Scott Pruitt closing in behind.
Just looking at the list of cars out of the race, not a particularly long list of retirements yet, and they've been fairly well behaved so far. We've only had the one full course caution period. In fact, this race has been run in the past without any yellow flags at all. In the 80s, there was a sequence of 3 races in 83, 84 and 85 when they didn't have to put the full caution yellows out at all. This time we've only had the one so far, and let's hope we can keep it that way and keep it a good clean race as Franchitti continues to hold off Gugelmin. But watch out for Scott Pruitt, who is catching up both of these guys, and that is going to be an interesting battle. Now then, on board, there it is with Dario Franchitti, the view back to Mauricio Gugelmin. This is another great camera position because it really shows the ups and downs there. You can see the drop as they come out of turn number 9, up the hill once again through the left-hander and then down into the carousel. And Franchitti still doing enough to hold on to this third place so far. Meanwhile, let me just tell you, further back down the order, that Michael Andretti is in the top 10. Teammate Christian Fittipaldi, let's hear from him now out of the race.
Yeah, something in the gearbox broke. I just lost drive in my car. That was it.
How was the tire wear on your good years? And again, you were on the softer, the option compound.
I was on the softer on the first stint. It wasn't perfect, but the car was hanging in there. At least I wasn't losing ground. And I knew that when I went for the second stint, things would have gone a lot better for me, as they did, because I was on a much harder tire. And the car was handling pretty good. I don't think we were on to win the race today, but a good, solid top 3 finish for sure.
Christian, how are you feeling physically? The leg coming along as you hoped?
Yeah, the leg's coming along just fine. I think, to be honest, I'm happier than ever. I think that I'm really competitive after everything that happened right in the beginning of the year. It's a shame that I'm just not finishing the races, but every race something happens. I hope that one day, things come my way.
Next week at Elkhart's, the next chance.
So Christian Fittipaldi, the disappointment for him, and Mauricio Gugelmin is into the pits for his second stop, just as we were about to show you how close he was getting to his fuel window. So this is the number 2 stop for Mauricio Gugelmin. He, remember, after this should be able to run pretty much flat out, won't have to worry about fuel worries, whereas everybody else will be turning down the wick somewhat, hoping to make it through without another stop, or on the other hand, hoping that there'll be a yellow flag, in which case they'll be able to come in.
Yeah, I reckon I'd be surprised if everybody didn't have to come in for a splash and go maybe 5, 6, 7 laps from the end of the race. I'd be very surprised if that wasn't the case. That might play out in their favour, because in actual fact Gugelmin might be the one who has to save fuel. We've got 26 laps to go at this stage. That's fine, that's well within the window, so he should be able to run pretty much flat out towards the end of the race. He's lost a lot of ground. He's fallen back probably about to 12th place, and he'll need to run hard if he's to make up too much ground before the end of this race. I would say certainly top 6 finishes on the cards here for Gugelmin, but he's got a lot of work to do.
So Mauricio Gugelmin then over the next 25 laps will be trying every opportunity to overtake, but at the moment it's Zanardi who leads Moore and Franchitti in Mid Ohio. Welcome back to Mid Ohio as we watch Dario Franchitti trying to hold off Scott Pruitt in the battle for third place. But Dario does seem to be struggling. He's been stuck behind Arndt Meyer for a couple of laps. He doesn't seem to have the straight line speed to be able to get past Meyer, which seems very, very strange. And I think Dario is not having a car that's working 100% underneath him. It shouldn't be hard work at all to get past Arndt Meyer, but it is proving to be that case.
Yeah, you certainly can't say that Meyer is holding him up, I don't think. And last lap around here, 1 minute 10.9 for Dario Franchitti, so that's a good second a lap slower than the race leader, and certainly nothing special indeed for Dario. So he's certainly got his work cut out at the moment. He's not really under intense pressure from Scott Pruitt, and he's probably just being, a little bit of conservatism at this stage in the proceedings is probably not a bad idea.
That's right, yes. Maybe it's all the question of fuel. These guys perhaps still trying to make it all the way through without a splash and dash stop to make it through to the checkered flag on lap number 83. We've got 22 laps to go of this 2.25 mile track. Zanardi, you're watching now, has a 13-second lead over Greg Moore. He really has opened up a tremendous advantage. And Zanardi, who took the race win here last year, who has been in incredible form on several occasions this year. Just remember that victory he took in Cleveland, took that fantastic second place behind Mark Blundell in Toronto. Good drive that, didn't take any gambles, was beaten by Blundell on the day. Blundell was able to pull away when it got when the pressure got a bit too close, but it was a good drive from Zanardi in terms of the championship. And here today he's driving another superb race, followed Herta in the early stages and now has controlled the race since then. But back again with Franchitti, and you've got a great view of Scott Pruitt right behind, and still they follow Arndt Meyer. Meanwhile, into the pits comes the Italian Max Papis, and he is running quite a lot further down in 15th position, Max Papis, but we're still running there, so let's hope that there's not too much of a problem for him. Meanwhile, Maurizio Gugelmin, remember, he's down in 12th position, and he won't have to stop, that's for sure, and he can run flat out. Still Arndt Meyer heading this battle between Dario Franchitti and Scott Pruitt. Franchitti in third, Pruitt in fourth, and then there's a bit of a gap back to Bobby Rahal, who's still holding fifth. Raul Boesel in sixth, Andretti seventh, Gugelmin down in 12th, as I mentioned. Behind Andretti's Jimmy Vasser and Gilles de Ferran. They've got a bit stuck behind Andretti over the last few laps, but what we did see while we were away was that Gualter Sales had a problem, and Gualter, who'd been running very well in 7th place, unfortunately has dropped away. And I think, Jeremy, has he been into the pits?
No, no sign of him, unfortunately. So stuck out on the track somewhere. I think he pulled off to the side of the road, and that's him out of the way. But yet another good run by the young Brazilian driver. Pretty heads-up move. He was one of the only 3 drivers to start on that harder compound Goodyear tire. He was working very, very consistently for him. He was turning some very good laps. Good couple of pit stops by that Davis Racing crew, and yet more heartbreak for them. They've had some super runs this year, and every time there seems to be some niggly little problem that puts them out of the race, and once again that's the case this afternoon. But another fine run for the young Brazilian Gualter Sales.
So look at this, Franchitti this time perhaps going for the move on Arndt Meyer, almost as if he turned the wick up there and decided that this was the time to go past. And now of course Scott Pruitt has got to do the same thing and find his way past the German driver. But the young German rookie not doing a bad job here, very inexperienced compared to most of the guys out there, of course, really coming from the world of Formula 3 and then stepping up to these hugely powerful Indy cars. Not doing a bad job today though with the fairly lowly funded team, and there Pruitt goes past him safely, so Scott Pruitt can continue the chase of Dario Franchitti.
Yeah, good, those two both able to get past cleanly, and the race leader, meanwhile, we're not looking at him on the screen at the moment, but he's actually come up behind Parker Johnson, who's running in 13th place, and it's going to be interesting. Parker Johnson's not renowned as the easiest person to get past, and he's come in for some criticism in the past, certainly this year, and we'll see whether he allows Alex Zanardi clean passage now in this race.
So Franchitti still has Pruitt behind him, and still has to watch his mirrors. Interestingly enough, last year, an old mate of Dario Franchitti's was racing here in the IndyCar race. That was Jan Magnussen. Magnussen did the race here last year. Didn't have a particularly successful run. Franchitti certainly going well here today in 3rd place. Let's just watch a moment from that rear-facing onboard camera. As Scott Pruitt hounds the back of Franchitti's car up through turn 9 here. Curving straight and then coming around to the final part of the lap. Now on board with Michael Andretti, and he's running at the moment down in 7th place, still with Jimmy Vasser behind him in 8th, and Gilles de Ferran one place further back in 9th. And these three have all been running together over the last few laps, but nobody seems to be able to grab an advantage. Just watching them come down to the carousel part of the course. Jimmy Vasser, I can tell you, there he is, in fact, on board with him. You can see he's only a couple of car lengths behind. Meanwhile, Gilles de Ferran has dropped away from these two just a little bit. And it seems to be Jimmy Vasser who's now applying the greatest pressure on Michael Andretti. Vasser in the Reynard, Andretti in the Swift, of course, and the Swift concerned, perhaps looking at getting a few more cars out there next year. But I know that Reynard are very, very confident, in fact, that they're going to maintain all of their customers from this year, so there won't be an awful lot of space for Swift to get many cars into the championship next season.
No, but I'm sure they'll have they want 4 or 5 teams is their goal, and I'm sure they'll have that. Who they'll be, of course, is a different question altogether. But, you know, I think a bit of conjecture might be that Steve Horn has certainly been a close ally of Carl Haas over the years, and I perhaps wouldn't be surprised to see Tasman certainly looking at the Swift, if not plumping for the Swift in the end. Incidentally, Alex Zanardi not only has got past Parker Johnstone cleanly, he's absolutely flying. His last lap around here was a 107.735, which I think is far and away the quickest lap of the race so far. He pulled away from Greg Moore on that last lap by 2 whole seconds. No one even close to Alex Zanardi's pace again this afternoon.
So amazing from Zanardi. What is he doing? I mean, he's got 17 laps to go. He's already got an 18.5-second lead, but he's banging in some quick ones. Does that mean that he's trying to build up a bit of a buffer to come in to put a bit more fuel in, do you think?
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's been kept up to speed with the strategy by the crew, but you know, he's got a pretty handy margin over everybody. And Mauricio Gugelmin, who's the only one who's not on the same strategy as he and everybody else, is well back. He's well back in 12th position. In actual fact, he's the last car on the lead lap, and in fact, he's actually in Alex Zanardi's sights right now.
You're looking at where you were until he got obscured. That was Qualter Salles, the very personable Brazilian, charming young man who really has done a good job this year, has come up through the ranks a little bit both in Europe and in America, because he competed in the Indy Lights Championship last year, but he raced in the British Formula 3 Series as well a few years ago, and really is a very likeable fellow indeed. Speaks a number of foreign languages and always very civil to talk to. It's just a shame today that he didn't have the luck with the car when he was running in a good top 10 position. Scored some points last time out in Michigan as well, which was good news for the Davis Racing team. Let's just listen to that Ford Cosworth motor in the back of Andretti's car. Seems to be pulling pretty effectively at the moment. Michael now in 7th position with a few retirements. He's gradually working his way up, but it does appear that we're hearing from the teams that splash and goes are going to be the name of the game in the latter part of this race. It doesn't look as though many of these guys are going to be able to make it through without having to come in and put a bit of fuel on board, and that's not a great surprise. Really, that's what we've been expecting. What it could mean, of course, is we're going to see some big changes in the last few laps of this race.
Yeah, but, you know, as I just said, everybody except for Mauricio Gugelmin is on the same fuel strategy. So Gugelmin, I think, certainly is in to make up several positions here, and he could make up, I reckon he might finish as high as 6th. But I think the top 6 are going to be out of reach for him. And, you know, the way Alex Zanardi is going, no one's even getting close to him. He's got a 25-second lead almost. And Dario Franchitti in 3rd place is a whole 42 seconds behind.
I think a lot of these teams have been banking on another yellow flag to save the bacon. And I think that Zanardi and Ganassi have decided they cannot bank on a yellow flag. He's decided to go for it. I mean, the last few laps have just been incredibly fast from Zanardi. He's in the 1 minute 7s. He was in the 1 minute 8s last time around. But he's consistently quicker than anybody else. It looks to me as though they've made that decision. They've got to go for it. He's trying to open up enough of a buffer so that when he comes into the pits, even if there was then a yellow flag and Moore was able to get round without having to make another pit stop, that he would still have the lead of this race. It's interesting the decisions they're having to make in the pits, and the yellow flags are just not happening for them. They're having to reassess their strategy. So there's Franchitti, 3rd place still for him. Pruitt in 4th place. Bobby Rahal still running well in 5th place. Oh dear.
I tell you what, I was just about to talk about Michel Jourdain Jr. Last time around, his lap was a 109.3. Actually, that was the quickest lap. No one was faster last time around. He'd made up a lot of ground on Andre Ribeiro. He's right behind him, just about to make a challenge. And there he is off on the grass. That's a great shame. The young Mexican was doing a fantastic job this afternoon.
Here go the first of the splash and dash manoeuvres. Jeremy, it's Scott Pruitt into the pits from 4th position. And we've got the clock running. It shouldn't be much fuel, but it's a fair bit, 8.4 seconds. It's still a fair chunk of time for Pruitt, and a fair bit of fuel going on board. That just gives you an idea of how little fuel they have for the latter part of this race. And there he's come out just ahead of Mauricio Gugelmin, who was running in 11th place. So Gugelmin, now the man who does not have to stop, but he's got Pruitt out ahead of him. I wonder if Gugelmin is going to be able to take advantage of this as Pruitt gets up to speed. Really, the Brazilian Mauricio Gugelmin needs to take this opportunity to get past him. He's got to do some serious overtaking in the latter part of this race, Gugelmin, if he's to take advantage of his different strategy. Climbing up the hill, didn't manage to take the advantage there.
And that's the race leader right behind him. We're looking now at the second place car of Greg Moore, almost a half a minute behind, 28.3 seconds behind. We've got a full course yellow. That must be for Jourdain's car, I think, off the road. I think that was at the end of the straightaway. We're on board with Zanardi, and there ahead of him are Mauricio Gugelmin and Scott Pruitt.
Now then, this is interesting. What are they going to do? Because it gives an opportunity to make a pit stop, and in fact we're seeing quite a few guys come in. Will Zanardi come in? Yes, he will. Zanardi coming into the pits. The race leader deciding to take advantage of this yellow flag to come into the pits. You can see Michael Andretti, that is, just pulling out in front of him. Zanardi has to go right up to the other end of the pits. Ribeiro's already in. We just flashed past him. And this is Zanardi's final stop. Let's see. It shouldn't be much fuel. Well, no, he didn't need a lot, did he? Look at that. A very, very rapid stop. 5.4 seconds. The team's calculating how much fuel needed to be put aboard the car, and Zanardi making a very quick stop indeed and not losing any ground at all. Greg Moore comes past us, and Zanardi still with a very healthy lead. But it's interesting, Jeremy, Greg Moore not coming into the pits there. Maybe he's hoping that this yellow flag will mean he's got enough fuel to make it to the end.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Dario Franchitti, we can see in front of our booth, he's coming into the pit, so he's going to have no problem towards the end of the race. And certainly with it, I think we're going to find, well, Bobby Rahal actually come past the pit. He's not made a stop either. And judging by Bobby Rahal's fuel consumption calculations so far this year, I'm quite surprised at that, because he's run dry twice on the final lap.
Now then, this means that Franchitti's dropped behind a few guys. Now then, quickly, he's going to end up coming out behind a gaggle of cars here. This is going to be difficult for him when he comes back out. And I wonder, you know, these guys, it looked as though they were hoping to make it through on the fuel. He was being careful, and now he's got a lot of overtaking to do in the latter part of this race. Tough time for Franchitti. You rejoin us just as it goes green flag racing, and Zanardi has the advantage here and is looking great for another victory on this Mid Ohio sports car course. Still 10 laps to go though, and Greg Moore is there in second place. He's got a couple of laps cars ahead of him, Arndt Meyer and Parker Johnston, but Greg Moore should be able to find his way past. Johnston is sliding around a bit, isn't he? Just ahead of the Canadian.
Yeah, he doesn't... Hopefully Greg Moore gets a run on him there, and Parker Johnson sees him coming. Greg Moore edges him over the road. Greg Moore wasn't very impressed there. I think he's making his feelings felt there to Parker Johnstone as he goes through and sets his sights now on the race leader, who's already disappeared out of view, hasn't he? Yeah. There's Arndt Meyer between them, and Zanardi already several seconds down the road.
Now remember, Greg Moore's not been into the pits for any fuel, any extra fuel that is. So he's going to have to watch the fuel consumption anyway. But Mercedes-Benz power, we've seen how economical that's been this year. That he has managed to really extract the most out of his engine already this year on a fuel run. And he may be fairly confident that he can make the finish. What concerns us a little bit is that Dario Franchitti seemed to be on a fuel-saving run, but then came into the pits for fuel, and it's dropped him down to 7th position. And he's now behind the likes of Jimmy Vasser and Gilles de Ferran, and it's going to be tough to overtake them. Meanwhile, let me tell you, Andre Ribeiro's just coming into the pits, and that, we believe, is to serve a penalty. He was speeding in the pit lane. Ribeiro has to wait until the green flag comes out, so Ribeiro into the pits for his penalty. He'll be straight back out again, but that could well lose him some ground.
Back on Dario Franchitti, I think Dario was more struggling than anything else. I think his car really wasn't handling quite how he wanted it to. I'll stand to be corrected on that one, but I think he was really pushing as hard as he could, and I just think that was as fast as the car would go. Of course, he has least experience of everybody around here. He has had one test day here, a couple of test days here, but that's it. And this is a tough racetrack. It takes its toll on the equipment and the drivers as well. Dario's a fit young man. I'm sure the physical attributes won't be a problem, but getting the car to be consistent for a whole race distance, that takes a bit of doing. And, you know, he's 7th place. It's certainly not what he wanted, but it's still a pretty good run for the young Scot.
Yeah, let's see whether he can overtake a few before the end of the race. Moore's gone through in 2nd place, just looking back down the order. And, well, Franchitti is struggling a little bit to stay on the back of de Ferran. In fact, he's got to watch out because he's got Mauricio Gugelmin behind him again, as he did in the early part of the race. And Gugelmin's looking quite threatening to get past Franchitti. There is the race leader by 3.2 seconds now. He built up a huge advantage before we had that second full course yellow. That was for the car of Michel Jourdain off the circuit. Greg Moore still pushing quite hard. The last lap, in fact, Greg Moore was a fraction quicker than Alex Zanardi. Rahal is now third. Bozell is now fourth. Fifth for Jimmy Vasser. Sixth for De Ferran there. Seventh for Dario Franchitti, with Maurizio Gugelmin right behind him. And there you are, on board with Franchitti running in seventh place, and with Maurizio Gugelmin breathing all over the back of his Reynard.
Yeah, Maurizio Gugelmin certainly didn't want to see that caution. I think without that caution, more teams and drivers would have been struggling to get to the end of this race without that splash and go. And that has cost Maurizio Gugelmin several positions, undoubtedly.
Little puff of smoke from the back of Franchitti's car. That seems to have been there for quite a while. It just makes you wonder whether that may not be part of the reason that he's not been able to set the same sort of pace as he did in the early part of the race, and indeed as in qualifying. Just wonder if there's not some little trouble there. Meanwhile, he's coming up to pass the car of PJ Jones, and still try and keep Maurizio Gugelmin behind him. This is the main battle at the moment, with 4 seconds now the gap between Zanardi and Moore, and we've just got 7 laps to go here in round 13 of the championship. Now let's see, is this going to be an opportunity for Maurizio Gugelmin? No, Franchitti gets past Jones. Now Gugelmin goes for the inside, and he's done it this time. There's no way that Franchitti could hold him off there, and Dario just couldn't fend off the Brazilian any longer. Franchitti drops back down to 8th place, and Michael Andretti will be the next one trying to put him under pressure in the closing stages of the race.
Nice clean pass there by Maurizio Gugelmin. I think he's pretty upset that his strategy didn't quite work out in his favour, but you know, he's been knocking on the door of a win this year. One of these days it's got to happen for this very, very likeable Brazilian driver. He's been around this sport a long time, and he's driven this season absolutely superbly. He certainly made a big mistake in Australia when he took out Jimmy Vasser in the sort of latter stages there, but other than that he's really driven well, and he doesn't deserve all these horrible little problems creeping up, or just things, circumstances conspiring against him. But a good effort here this afternoon again, and up into 7th place.
Well, this is the view from the race leader, I do believe, and you can see it's just a completely clear road behind him. There is the Italian Alex Zanardi, and there we wait and wait and wait, and eventually we see the car that's in second position. There it is, it's Greg Moore, the Canadian. I have to say though, for Greg Moore, this is the sort of result that he needs. He's had a run of 3 non-finishes recently, and for Greg Moore, who has really been a championship contender this year, he's dropped to 5th place in the championship, still on 95 points though, and still within range. He's still some 32 points behind Alex Zanardi in the championship, but remember, you get 20 points for a win in this championship, so that's really not too bad. But he desperately needs the points here today. For Bobby Rahal, well, he's not really featuring in the championship. He's way down in 13th place, but a 3rd place would be an excellent result for Bobby Rahal here today, after what has been a bit of an up and down season, the highlight of which was nearly winning in Rio. But remember, one of the lowlights was last week, or 2 weeks ago in Michigan, when he had a very, very heavy impact against the wall.
Yeah, he hit the wall hard, didn't he? And that was a major accident there. Certainly that car was junked. The complete new car built up to replace that car damaged at Michigan Speedway. And since then, of course, Bobby Rahal's been off playing golf. He was over in Scotland. He played Royal Troon, of course, the side of this year's British Open. He played St Andrews, and he had a wonderful time. And he's certainly seems to have rejuvenated his driving as well. He's not really been on the pace throughout practice and qualifying, but I think part of that reason is because he was on the harder Goodyear tyres. But a super consistent run this afternoon, no mistakes whatsoever. And the oldest driver in the PPG CART series, actually apart from Charlie Neerberg, who's just joined for a couple of races. But Bobby really doing a fine job here for the old guard of the CART PPG circuit.
Well, if Gerhard Berger can win in Formula 1, there's no reason why Bobby Rahal can't still win in this championship, although he's not going to win it today by the looks of it. But a 3rd place would be a fine result for the team after taking pole position with the other car, and really justified result as well. Greg Moore in 2nd, Bobby Rahal in 3rd. Meanwhile, behind Rahal, there's a bit of a gap back, not too long, it's about 3 seconds back to Brazilian Raul Bozell, who's having a good second half to the season as well. He had a fine 3rd place finish, remember, in the another racetrack that we had not long ago, the Portland race, when he was part of that dramatic finish when Marc Blundell beat Gilles de Ferran, but Raul Bozell was right there as well. And Raul's having another good run here today.
Yeah, he always goes well on this racetrack. The super speedways, he's absolutely magnificent on the whole, and this place he absolutely loves. He's gone well several times here in the past. He's had a best finish of 4th on this racetrack, actually in '93, but several other times, you know, he's been in good positions and had problems put him out of contention. A blown engine one time just a couple of years ago when he was driving for Team Rahal, but another good effort by Raul Boesel.
Good news this for Bobby as well, isn't the fact that this is a Miller-sponsored race, and of course he's had a long-term association with the Miller Company, the Miller Brewing Company. They've got a lot of guests here today as well, so I think they'll be even more delighted by the fact that he's running so well there in 3rd place. A little bit of cloud, heavier looking cloud opposite us in the commentary box window at the moment, but I don't think we're going to see any rain in the closing stages of this race. It's managed to hold off all day so far, and that's good news. We've seen a good race. Last part of the race perhaps has been a little bit strung out. After the last round of pit stops, it's become clear that Zanardi's advantage that he built up in the early part of the race is enough really to continue his dominance over Greg Moore in 2nd.
Yeah, just a touch there of Greg Moore locking up a brake there, clipping the edge of the track. He's really driving hard. 1 minute 8.050 his last time around. He's turning up the wick, and he's actually closed quite significantly on Alex Zanardi last time around. I think Zanardi is fairly content to take his time. Look at Greg Moore bouncing off the curbs there. He's giving in everything.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Remember, Greg didn't come in for extra fuel. Just shows you that they really got some good economy out of that car.
Yeah, he's obviously got the all clear now from Steve Challis, his race engineer, who's been with him incidentally since his Formula 4 days. 2 laps to go, 3.3 seconds between them. He's pulled off a second a lap off Zanardi's lead the last couple of laps, and he's really on the edge. He's driving beautifully as Greg Moore.
Yeah, I wonder, is Zanardi in any sort of trouble? Into the pits comes Dario Franchitti. Franchitti has come into the pits, I don't know why, but he was running in 8th position, remember, and I cannot believe that Franchitti is going to lose the chance to score points once again. Let's see, looks as there was a splash of fuel he needed. Well, I don't believe it. How on earth could he have needed a splash of fuel there? I really don't understand that, because he'd already been into the pits for fuel, unless, of course, there was a problem getting the fuel in when he came in last time around. But whatever the reason, Franchitti again drops down the order in the closing stages of a race.
Yeah, unless there was a problem with the refueling rig there, one has to presume, certainly when they come into the pits, they know how much fuel they want. It's a timed stop. The fuel nozzle is connected for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever it is. And one has to presume that somebody didn't get that right. As there goes Alex Zanardi to take the white flag. Greg Moore, you can see him. There's the gap between him with 3.0 seconds. That's going to be a bit too much for Greg Moore to make up, I think, but he's certainly going to try.
Yeah, Alex taking a little look in his mirrors. I think he's okay. I think he's just taking it easy in the closing stages of this race. Greg Moore putting in a concerted charge to finish this one off and closing the gap. Bobby Rahal, meanwhile, in 3rd place. Boesel 4th. Vassar still in 5th. And he's been heading Gilles de Ferran for a good part of this race, with behind them Maurizio Gugelmin. But Zanardi is heading toward the 4th victory of the year, and more importantly, to a very healthy championship lead. And this will be the biggest championship lead, really, we've seen all year for anybody. If he comes through to finish this lap, it will give him a 26-point advantage over Paul Tracy. Just has to avoid Matsushita's going very, very slowly. Now, that might have been a little bit of a scare for the Italian, but he survives that one. And Zanardi now coming down to the final couple of corners here through the carousel, drops downhill. Alex Zanardi coming through to win the 4th race of the season and the 4th victory for the Target Ganassi team. Greg Moore comes through in 2nd position for the Players team, for Forsyth Racing, and 3rd place for Bobby Rahal. This is the battle for 5th, but Jimmy Vassar's going to hold on to that. So it's a good day once more for Chip Ganassi as he gets both cars in the top 5. De Ferran is 6th. Maurizio Gugelmin is in 7th. Then Andretti, Pruitt, Ribeiro. Franchitti takes 11th, I think, but we'll have to wait and see as he comes through. Well done, Alex Zanardi. He has driven an absolutely superb race. Dominant once again on this Mid Ohio course. And once again, Jeremy, we see a driver taking 2 wins in a row. It seems to be an interesting statistic. Franchitti has just crossed the line, by the way, confirmed that he finished in 11th place, but that's only 2 points. And again, what a shame after running so competitively. But the question is, can anybody now stop Zanardi taking this title?
That's going to be awfully difficult. The last part of last season, all these tracks that he's been to before, he was absolutely magnificent. He qualified on the front row for every single race the last half of last season. He's on a tear now. His confidence is sky high. He's another magnificent drive here this afternoon at Mid Ohio. His second victory in a row here, and boy, he's going to be awfully tough to catch, Ben.
He is, yes, and with Road America coming up next week, which is another fantastic racing circuit up in Wisconsin, that's going to suit Alex Zanardi very well. But of course, we all know how changeable it is. So Max Papis bringing Hiro Matsushita back to the pits, and obviously a disappointment for Matsushita not to quite finish off the race.
I think he actually did finish the race. He actually did cross the finish line. He stopped, pulled off after turn 1. You know, it's amazing. Since Hiro got his 97 car and engine at Gateway International Raceway, I think it was, he's finished every single race. And he did actually maintain that record here. He did get around to take the checkered flag. So remarkable effort from Hiro Matsushita. He's had some problems. He's not desperately quick, perhaps, but he is finishing and getting the miles in, and that's good for Toyota. They need all the development miles they can get.
Now then, looks like Alex is proposing to do some donuts, possibly. We've seen him do this in the past, haven't we? Yeah. Listen to the engine. Off he goes.
There's not a lot of room here.
It didn't work, Alex. Bad luck. Nope, now he stalled it. Well done. There's a groan from the crowd, a sort of sympathetic cry from the crowd. But, oh, what do I do now? What do you have to do? He's won the race, that's all that matters, and the crew come running over. Absolute delight for the crew as well. It's been an interesting season for Alex Zanardi, of course. If we just look at the way things have gone for him so far this year, he took that pole position in the first race of the year at Homestead, but a little bit off the pace in the end, finished down in 7th, pole in Surface Paradise. Had a battle with Paul Tracy, which saw them both in trouble, and then he recovered to finish in 4th.
Temporary victory lane, so he's come to the end of pit road. The car's come to a stop. He's going to be taking his helmet off. Alex Zanardi, 27-point bulge over Paul Tracy in the chase for the championship. But tell us about that last stop. You radioed back. Congratulations to your crew.
Absolutely. We had the speed since I did the first race with the Target Chip Ganassi Racing. I think I had the speed to win races. But today was a team effort, and today is actually I wouldn't say the first time, but today definitely the team worked like a championship team. So I'm very happy. We gain a level. If we can keep up there with the kind of quality of work we've been doing today, I'm sure nobody can beat us.
Are you talking about communication or performance? Can you narrow it down what you think the difference is now?
Effort. 150% from Chip Ganassi, which is the boss of the team, to the guy that sweeps the workshop on Sunday night when everybody is supposed to come back. So that was an effort race. That was, with all the ingredients in this world, we wanted very badly, and we didn't lose our focus, so I have to congratulate to this man. He did a great job today. I think we all did.
Talking about Chip Ganassi now, Alex Zanardi says that it was a team effort. Is this the team to beat for the rest of the season, Chip?
I don't know, Jack. There's a lot of season left, but I'll tell you what, he certainly proved he's the driver to beat.
Let's ask Alex. Alex, are you saying that this will be the team to beat?
If the team keeps working as we did today, it will be the team to beat for long.
Gary, there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that.
Wow, I know. Well, here's a smile coming back to the face of Greg Moore. And what does it feel like to get some momentum back in a championship battle that looked like it was sliding away?
It's unbelievable. I mean, Alex has got a fairly significant lead over all of us now, but we had 3 really bad races there, and I got to apologize for not talking to everybody after Michigan. It was just one of those things where the emotions were just too high, and it's nice to get the ball rolling again. Everyone on my team's worked so hard in the last 3. Didn't get any finishes, but to get second here, I'm pretty pleased with it.
You had to conserve some fuel, and then there was that late yellow. You elected with your crew to stay out. Did you hope, obviously, that you were going to be able to get some track position and maybe be in front of Zanardi despite his splash?
Yeah, that's what we were hoping, is that we would have enough. He would stay in the pits just quite long enough to make sure that he had enough fuel. But at the very end there, we didn't have, because we stayed out, we didn't have enough fuel, so we had to sort of back off on the straightaways again. But I think if we had enough fuel, we would have been able to give him a good run.
Gives you some great momentum going to Elkhart next week.
Sure does.
Greg Moore is a happy crew, Bob.
So Greg Moore definitely moving up in the championship again. That's got him back up to 4th place in the series. So that gives him a little bit of a boost as we get towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the Mercedes-Benz engines, the Ilmor engines, have really shown excellent straightaway speed in his last few events. I think Greg Moore, he goes very well at Road America. He's going to be tough to beat there, I think, in 1 week's time.
Confirmation of the result then. Alex Zanardi the winner from Greg Moore, Bobby Rahal, Raul Boesel in fine 4th place, Jimmy Vasser in 5th, and Gilles de Ferran surviving the incident in the pit lane earlier to finish in 6th place. Behind them was Maurizio Gugelmin in 7th, Michael Andretti in 8th, Scott Pruitt in 9th, Andre Ribeiro, Dario Franchitti and Parker Johnston. Hope you've enjoyed the programme with us here today. From Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw, and from Jack Arute and Gary Gerald down in the pits, who've been providing us with good interviews and all the stories. We'll be back again next week from Road America. I do hope you can join us then. But for now, bye-bye.